subject matter with which one engages frustrates the hermeneutic drive, or it menaces the whole enterprise and plan of judicious approach, undermining all the good intentions mobilized toward a sensible dialogue or purposeful probe. A vexed motif, an unauthorized problem set, threatens to capsize you. Be that as it may, I am a child of the university, an entity whose expressions of ambivalence have not yet destroyed me. But how does one know that one has not been destroyed? I have evidence to the contrary. That is for another occasion. One day I will investigate the tyranny of the university over my own trajectories and dream projects, beginning with the way it has ruled over and overruled my body, beating down any healthy instinct, trampling the least cellule of creativity. But this problem does not move me now, and I know too well that I'm rigged to be grateful that traumatic invasiveness, with all its identificatory passes, is also in the end structuring. I think this may help us all here to know that trauma is what structures you, so hang on to it. I mark these coordinates not only, or not out of a sense of entitled indulgence or narcissistic complacency, but in order to situate myself near the problem areas that my present work claims to traverse. The exercise of authority, including the often covert habits of tyranny and evocations of injustice in the university, remain to be studied, even as such investigations tend to downscale other, more manifestly distressed experiences of wrongdoing. If I have begun this segment of my run by slowing down for an institutional checkpoint, this happened in part because experience, be it flagged by distress, disaster, scales of exaltation, or even mundanity, must nowadays be faced without the hallmark of truth. Truth was once affiliated with and came after ruin, often depending for its disclosure and light on the staging of someone's or something's ruinous disintegration. That would be when truth might have manifested after an experience or thematization of ruin. Today, by contrast, disaster is without truth, occurring without a sign cast from the luminous concealment of a beyond. Deprived of shelter, pitched on the edge of metaphysics, one is thrown back upon minimalist signposts and decidedly modest directives. We are more on our own than ever before, more responsible for locating the incitements of an essentially untraceable call. I'm not the only one to have been left behind when the gods absconded. I have heard you cry. I listen to the rumble of remote but unavoidable clashes. The job description of those left behind, without guarantor or reliable transcendence, without the pat on the back telling you to go on. You're doing the right thing, hang in there. We scour the breakups, size the fissures, staying close to the fragile underground of falsely grounded knowledge systems. We come in after the break in the historical and nearly ontological zone that Jean-Luc Nancy designates as after tragedy, where he analyzes what venir après means. So this is where Jean-Luc Nancy situates our modernity after tragedy, after Greek tragedy, of course. What it means to ride in on the wake, to come in afterwards, like the very concept of history, like all the posts and their chronologic, which come after Aristotle. I will be considering the links between the destiny of democracy and the loss of tragedy. The vanishing gods have left mortals on their own, among themselves in a space where the address is no longer oriented toward gods, offering victims and sacrifice, but toward one another, left to wonder how and where language holds on to former rites of sacrifice, the subterranean residue of a major switchover. So what happens when we're no longer addressing the gods? And what happened to the events of sacrifice and rites? Where do they disappear to, or mark or disarticulate existence or being? Whether or not we try to track the historical release from truth, it's often violent unleashing, or the way ancient scenes of disaster bleed, leak, or smear into contemporary politics. It is still the case that since, or rather after, Kant, one no longer knows what to do with or where to place so-called human dignity, how to make it stick or stand plump with meaning. I, for my part, coming after so many and so much, will grow low now, start small, without the pretenses of any derivative of God or subject or master signifier on my side, striking out on my own, but not even with the snug fit of knowing what could be claimed as my own. I don't even have bragging rights or boast the triumphalist narcissism of being on my own or ownmost. Even my being towards death is not my own. But that's another philosophical story that Wolfgang will tell us about, I'm sure. The strictures governing utterance are real, and the scene of inscription, as Kafka has taught us, has become uncannily local, personal yet emptied of boastful interiorities or measurable achievement. So for me, it's back to school, strapped into place on academic death row, last seat in the last row, clenched by a history of repeated punishment. It's not bad. I've grown to like it. I wobble in place without the brace of truth. That's my only point here, which is what forces the I onto the page. As I offer a clip, a situation without substantial backing, but that must go on. I can't go on. Authority, as Kojève makes clear, has less than nothing to do with force or with strategies of implementation. It evades the subphenomena of forcible assertion as well. And later on, maybe I can give you a very funny example of what authority, how it performs itself. But Kojève makes it clear and asks you to understand that it's not a matter of force. Authority, someone who commands authority doesn't command authority because of either on one hand a rhetoric of persuasion or on the other hand of force. It evades the subphenomena of forcible assertion as well, since it repudiates legal types of bullying and disdains the arbitrary throwing of power punches. So authority doesn't get in there and get down and dirty. It has a certain sovereignty that I want us to consider. In fact, authority supersedes and trumps force on all essential counts, separating off from it with a kind of sovereign aloofness. I would want to argue with this view not only to the extent that force has proven to be philosophically inappropriable, difficult to pin down as concept or theme, unlike violence or Gewalt, with which philosophical thought has a long involvement, but also because we are made to confront other decisive stalls. Kojève's set of assertions ignores the positing powers of linguistic acts, suppresses the subtle straits of education, and sideswipes psychoanalysis, where figures of potency power up in covert sites and make legal inroads. Still, so Kojève's notion of force doesn't include the way language itself, according to Lacan, for example, can force itself into your orifice